Hello?
Yes,
Yes,
brother.
yes.
Hey, sorry, I told you I'm sleeping already. Then no need to go down. You never see the message.
Oh. Then
Ah,
how is it? Because
you know what's teleconferencing or not? Ah, tomorrow morning you let it conference the doctor. Ah, easier. No need to go down. That's why I say
then the doctor want to see who doctor?
another doctor.
Please call the doctor. I
Ah,
call the doctor.
yes, we'll arrange the call. You just call the doctor give you doctor memo, you go down do physiotherapy. Like that better because you like that you still got I can give you some cashback. Like that better, right?
I don't know. But
Ah.
I don't know. But I don't know. Wow.
Don't know, no need, just talk to the doctor. Then after that, the physio memo I will arrange for you to go and see physiotherapy also. Don't worry.
Then the doctor never see me.
Teleconference or
Huh?
via phone call, video call, via video call.
Then they never touch anything.
No need. No need. Can.
They know. Then they never see my butt.
No need lah, video lah. Maybe you video a bit, turn the camera around, handphone let him see a bit lor.
Can. But when?
Tomorrow I arrange the morning tomorrow timing. Hey, what time you okay? 10 to 11, 9 to 10, right? Before you work.
Can.
Okay. Hey, sorry no, because last night I never sleep.
It's okay, no problem. Because down there parking very problem.
Paragon ma.
Parking problem, sir.
Yeah. Sorry. I sleep. I thought I told you don't go sleep. Really. Sorry. My bad. Next time I belanja you makan.
No, it's okay, no problem. No problem.
Okay. Thank you. Then I arrange. I message you the teleconference doctor and phone number. And link all this.
Thanks.
Okay. Can. Okay. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Hello.
เอาล่ะไปกันเลยใน800 เมตร ชิดซ้าย
consistent aura around him, which was of a certain kind of dignity and a certain kind of scariness and a certain kind of, ooh, he must be scary to meet kind of thing.
People, when sometimes they say, you always play villains, you always play the bad cards. No, I play people. Good and evil is a state of mind, depends on which side you are.
He was, I think, soft as putty.
That's what's so interesting about monsters. And you gotta remember, 15th century by Frederick Barbarossa, Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. Our noble lineage could be traced directly back to Charlemagne. But let's not dally with detail, for as impressive a list of soldiers, governors, senators and clergymen the Carandini tree may offer, our time is short and our subject is me. Of this mighty family tree, at the time of my birth, a sapling had been growing quite admirably in London for some years. My maternal grandfather was the Count Carandini, and my mother, his only child, the Contessa Estelle Marie Carandini de Sarzano. My mother was an Edwardian beauty, and in her youth a muse to many. She was painted, sketched, sculpted, and etched, desired by many, but landed by one. Lieutenant Colonel Geoffrey Lee of the King's Royal Rifle Corps, a hero of the Boer War and the Great War, survivor of the Somme.
Quite late on in life, I got a book called I Carandini, and they look like a lot of rogues. Sort of the mafia of their day. But you know, to get on, you know, the cynical view is that to keep a title for 700 years or something, you've got to have killed a lot of people.
I grew up in the shadow of achievement and nobility, and as a child wondered if I would be able to live up to the remarkable lives of those who had preceded me. I was, at heart, one, as was my papa, who wandered away from us when I was just 4 years old, never to return.
His mother was very strict, and he had a very uptight upbringing. You know? So he was a bit naive in certain ways.
There I am. I look like quite a normal boy, don't I? And in many ways I was. Equally anxious and arrogant. But my childhood was unique. We were sprung once more into high society when my mother remarried. My stepfather was a small but exceedingly strong man, known as Ingle. He was a banker in Bonfiveur. To celebrate their union, I was swiftly dispatched to boarding school in the hope that they might whip me into shape to be accepted into Eton. One could hardly describe me as a star student, but the desire to please consumed and overwhelmed me. So it is, perhaps, no surprise that I was to end up on the school stage. Mother, Ingle, and my sister Zara made the journey for the first night of the school production of Henry V. And they all excitedly agreed that a bright future in acting awaited the proud young boy playing the eponymous lead. Sadly, that boy was not me. I loved the stage, and I was an obstinate little so-and-so. Perhaps my time would have been better spent on the study of mathematics, for it was that, along with a downturn in Ingle's finances, which would lead me away from the path to Eton. Instead, at 14, I was enrolled in Wellington College. Wellington was a military establishment, and, I suppose, much like the rest of the public schools of the day, but with the addition of endless polishing. The smell of brass oak haunts my nostrils still.
If you've got some sensitivity and you've got a sort of, for want of a better word, an artistic soul, and you're pushed through the British public school system as a male, it can absolutely kill that. There's such a strong ethic in that schooling that about what it is or is not to be a man. And I think right down in his heart, this is my intuition, there's absolutely nothing to bear this up, it's just sense. He was very feminine and very sensitive, and I feel that he didn't quite know how to express that side of him.
What awaited me as I aged out of Wellington was likely an Oxbridge education followed by a career in international diplomacy. I was practically bred for it. By this stage, my French, German, and Russian were already rather good. But something happened. Ingle went bust, bankrupt, to the sum of £25,000. He left my mother and faded into the distance.
I never knew his father, my grandfather, and I never knew his stepfather. Both those father figures had sort of disappeared out of his life. And that explains quite a lot about him as well, because he didn't have a father around. It was his mother's influence that he took away into the world much more.
At 19 years old, unsure of my future, I found myself in Paris. Early one morning, a friend dragged me to Versailles. There was something he wanted me to see. We arrived to an open square, steadily filling with people. Dawn broke over the scene, and I realized that the focus of the amassed crowd was Madame Guyon. reached in the gut, placed on the monstrous contraption, and adjusted into position. The blade fell, and I failed to look away. I was sickened to my soul. I watched the gleeful crowd clamor to dip their handkerchiefs into his warm blood as a grisly souvenir.
He had witnessed the last execution in France with the guillotine, so he was obsessed with executions. And he kept execution memorabilia. This is the rope that was used to hang I don't know who. But who gave you that? That was Pierre who gave it to me. I'm going to leave it in my will to Roger Moore. And remember that he wrote, I am leaving you the rope that was used to hang King I don't know what, that my friend Pierre Point passed over to me. I'd like you to have it. I don't think Roger Moore got it.
I now suspected my friend was trying to dispel my naivete, ready me for the brutalities of war. Because, within weeks, the party was over, and all of a sudden, the Germans had come. I returned to London. On the 3rd of September, Chamberlain declared me at war. Keen to reveal myself a hero, I immediately reported to the War Office, who had no apparent need for me. So, I took a job in the city and grew accustomed to the noises of the war at home. Then, I heard something even worse. I heard that my wayward papa was in hospital with a terminal diagnosis. He was barely 60. It was, I suppose, to honor him that I swiftly decided again to enlist and join the war abroad. I couldn't face the army, so I took to the skies. 6 weeks by sea and 1 by train brought us to flight training in Rhodesia, far from enemy fire. South Africa was a paradise. Behind the controls of a broken cockpit Tiger Moth, I felt alive. In the shimmering heat haze of a dusty afternoon, we would storm, spin, and loop our halves to becoming fully fledged pilots. During my final company flight, my head filled with fire, and I went blind in my left eye. I was diagnosed with an unreliable optic nerve. My dreams of flight were put paid to. Following this, I rather expected my war to be a dull, clerical affair. But then, I found myself in an operational squadron, and my role was that of spy. 5 missions a day was our average, and with our robust fighter bombers, the P-40s, we outclassed the German Luftwaffe every time. Well, except once. We were in Tunisia, and I was standing on the airstrip, assessing the skies firsthand. As I turned around, I was faced with a sheer wall of flame. Above it, 4 German Me-109s heading directly for me. I sprinted, completely exposed, looking for somewhere to dive for cover. The bombs couldn't have been more than 150 yards away. I could feel the heat singe my neck hair. The final bomb landed within range, and the blast rent asunder the ground behind me. The debris created was, as if fired by shotgun, targeted almost entirely to my buttocks. Within 10 minutes, I was being debriefed in both senses of the word. I could not sit down for 2 days, and had I been able, I suspect I would not have been permitted to. This raid was my fate. I would not fail again. As the war ended, there was still important work to be done. My next posting was to serve with the Central Registry of War Crimes and Security Suspects. A position which sounds almost clerical, but became known somewhat more grandly as Nazi hunter. The adventures I had during this period remain highly classified. I could relate to you a story or two, but sadly, I would have to kill you, and we don't want that to do.
There was some mystery attached to his work during the war. A lot of that, I think, is to do with the Official Secrets Act and the fact that Lee himself was not willing to open up about it.
said simply, "Why don't you become an actor, Christopher?" So that was that. It was immediately apparent to me that he was right. Before I even had a chance to fail, Nicola arranged a meeting for me with his film with the Rank organization.
I suppose if you were being a jerk, it's a bit touchy. There's nepotism in these ancient film industry. So it was all very easy, but I think in the immediate post-war years, it didn't last very long, but the British film industry was in its zenith. And I think there was a great hunger, particularly after the war, to create new stars. And so as a result, Lee was packed off to the Rank Charm School, as it became known, which had an expressed wish to create British and hopefully later, as they call it, international stars.
Who were they, you said, to fill up the lower half of the cast lists of a provincial repertory theatre. And, admittedly, many lessons were learned which would shape me as an actor. The first time I trod the boards was as Roberto the Butler in The Constant Nymph. I gave it my all. I buttled relentlessly. More than this, I acted. I acted my young heart out. When one of the principal characters cried, I shed a tear with them. When one laughed, I laughed too, as if my sides were splitting. I responded to every word of that script as I felt right. From my place in the background, I projected surprise and vulnerability. The curtain fell to the info, and the director took me aside. I couldn't tell whether he was laughing or crying, but either way, he left me in no doubt as to my transgression. I had upstaged the entire production. My feelings were terribly hurt, and I was greatly embarrassed. I was, however, vindicated when the reviews came in. The critics singled me out as having provided welcome light relief. By day, in Highbury, we learned Stanislavski's method of physical action. We fenced, we pranced, we raged, and we paraded the old church. Following this, I rather expected my war to be a dull, clerical affair. But then, I found myself in an operational squadron, and my role was that of spy. 5 missions a day was our average, and with our robust fighter bombers, P-40s, we outclassed the German Luftwaffe every time. Well, except once. We were in Tunisia, and I was standing on the airstrip, assessing the skies firsthand. As I turned around, I was faced with a sheer wall of flame. Above it, 4 German Me-109s heading directly for me. I sprinted, completely exposed, looking for somewhere to dive for cover. The bombs couldn't have been more than 150 yards away. I could feel the heat singe my neck hair. The final bomb landed within range, and the blast rent asunder the ground behind me. The debris created was as if fired by shotgun, targeted almost entirely to my buttocks. Within 10 minutes, I was being debriefed in both senses of the word. I could not sit down for 2 days, and, had I been able, I suspect I would not have been permitted to. This raid was my failing. I would not fail again. As the war ended, there was still important work to be done. My next posting was to serve with the Central Registry of War Crimes and Security Suspects, a position which sounds almost clerical, but became known somewhat more grandly as Nazi Hunter. The adventures I had during this period remain highly classified. I could relate to you a story or two, but sadly, I would have to kill you. And we don't want that, do we?
There is some mystery attached to his work during the war and immediately after it. A lot of that, I think, is to do with the Official Secrets Act and the fact that Lee himself was not willing to open up about it to any great degree. And I think it has actually created a great deal of confusion.
I know a bit, because he spoke perfect German, perfect French, and perfect Italian. He was involved with a lot of sabotage and working with partisans behind the enemy lines, and also in targeted assassinations, which of course the British government doesn't know anything about.
It was very intense. There are some things he didn't want to get into, but it marked him. Experiences.
But I gave him shit. I mean, I always wanted to know, tell me about the war. John, I can't.
It marked him, the experiences.
But I gave him shit. I mean, I always wanted to know, tell me about the war. John, I can't. Come on, tell me about the war. Come on, Chris. And I always gave him a hard time. And one day we were at a restaurant in Sloane Square, and he had had several glasses of wine, and he wasn't tipsy, but he was a little loose. And I said, Chris, this is the perfect moment. Tell me about your war experiences. And he said, you know I can. And I said, come on, who am I going to tell, Chris? And I kept giving him shit. And then finally he said, John, and he leaned forward. Could be suddenly imposed. He leaned forward. He said, can you keep a secret? So of course I leaned forward and go, yes. And he said, so can I.
I arrived back in London, like so many of my generation, to find that civilian life had far less use for me than the military had. With a new blue suit and half a pound of shrapnel forever embedded in my buttocks, I slowly explored my options and ravenously accepted all invitations to lunch. One such invitation came from my mother's cousin Niccolo, the Italian ambassador to Great Britain. Amidst my drunken tales and impersonations, Niccolo said simply, why don't you become an actor, Christopher? So, that was that. It was immediately apparent to me that he was right. Before I even had a chance to fail, Niccolo arranged a meeting for me with his friend who worked with the Rank organization.
I suppose if you were being uncharitable, you could say that there was a touch of almost nepotism involved in Lee's entry into the film industry. So it was all very easy, but I think in the immediate post-war years, it didn't last very long, but the British film industry was at its zenith. And I think there was a great hunger, particularly after the war, to create new stars. And so as a result, Lee was packed off to the Rank Charm School, as it became known, which had an expressed wish to create British and hopefully later, as they put it, international stars.
Who worthy, we were said, to fill out the lower half of the cast lists of a provincial repertory theatre. And, admittedly, many lessons were learned which would shape me as an actor. The first time I trod the boards was as Roberto the Butler in The Constant Nymph. I gave it my all. I battled relentlessly. More than this, I acted. I acted my young heart out. When one of the principal characters cried, I shed a tear with them. When one laughed, I laughed too, as if my sides were splitting. I responded to every word of that script as I felt right. From my place in the background, I projected outrage, good humor, surprise, and bonhomie. The curtain fell for the intro, and the director took me aside. I couldn't tell whether he was laughing or crying, but either way, he left me in no doubt as to my transgression. I had upstaged the entire production. My feelings were terribly hurt, and I was greatly embarrassed. I was, however, vindicated when the reviews came in. The critics singled me out as having provided welcome light relief. By day, in Highbury, we learned Stanislavski's method of physical action. We fenced, we pranced, we raged, and we paraded the old church hall with books upon our heads. Of course, no directors had the slightest interest in using us for more than background and stand-ins for the talent. But this, in itself, was film set experience, and therefore useful. I was 24 when I gave my first performance on film, a kindness extended to me by director Terence Young, who overcame the standard reason for my rejection, the issue of my height, by keeping me seated. The film was Corridor of Mirrors. I had one line, and it was a withering barb against the lead.
Take a look. Standing in the entrance, Lord Barr.
My Lord Maladroit, flash.
To some degree, in that moment, my die was cast, the nucleus of my celluloid id. Upper class, educated, loquacious, and disdainful. Soon after, Rank decided to give its company of youth an accelerant boost. Rather than scattering us in small roles across its bigger releases, it would give us all big roles in our own tiny release. It was, of course, a horrible idea. None of us were nearly ready enough to carry an entire feature, and had it not been compulsory to attend the premiere on the Tottenham Court Road, I'm sure all of us would have preferred to be elsewhere. It was, however, my first time in the role of chief antagonist, the bad guy. Sadly, the only thing more diabolical than my character's intent was the performance of the actor inhabiting it. Such was the British film industry in those days that even this early on, I was at least working and my star was arguably rising. Scott of the Antarctic was a generously budgeted booming production. It starred John Mills as the legendary explorer, and I was one of his ill-fated team. Not unlike the explorer I portrayed, I would also shortly be out in the cold. I was told by my benefactors at rank that I was too tall and too foreign-looking to be a film star, and I was out on my gear. My 1950s would be a mixed bag of quite small roles in quite big films. But then, there were also the small roles in small films. And then there were the uncredited roles. These years were not without their high points. I parried with Errol Flynn.
He was quite a good fencer. Although, how many people have told you that Chris would go like this? And he'd point at his damaged finger. And he'd say, Errol Flynn did that to me. Which he did. In a duel in some movie. Errol Flynn was not an excellent fencer.
But these were not roles that I could get my teeth into. It was a living, and it was work. The notion of film acting, especially in Britain at that time, as being in any way glamorous or indicative of a luxurious lifestyle, is entirely false.
Back then, maybe still today, I don't know, there's a slight whiff of disreputability, if that's a word, clung to the acting thing.
I think there was a bit of him saying, I suppose you think I'm not worthwhile because I'm just an actor. You know, which, of course, that's reversed much now, where, you know, you get a lot of people go, oh, gosh, actors, they're really exciting people. But in my father's day, there was a bit of snootiness about actors.
Of course, he always told the story that when he went to his mother and announced his intention to become an actor, and she literally, in a very actressy way, she struck a melodramatic pose, possibly, you know, the back of the hand to the forehead, and said, an actor, Christopher, just think of all the appalling people you'll meet.
It was work. It was work which I generally enjoyed, and work in which I became increasingly proficient. But it was 9 a.m. to 6:20 p.m. with a 15-minute tea break and 1 hour for lunch. It was a job, and 7 years in a job without notable progression would be frustrating to anybody. But it was not just my lack of progress which frustrated me. I really wanted to sing.
Wer dem Meeres tiefstem Schlund stürzt dich voll Sehnsucht bis hinab. Da war der Schiff, das uns vergraben, trieb ich mein Schiff zum Klippengrund. Näher kein dein Grab, niemals der Tod.
My love for opera had blossomed, and with my film career barely advanced in the best part of a decade, I petitioned a professor at the Royal College of Music for help. Too tall, too foreign-looking, and now too old. My dream was dead, dead, dead. And that was, I suppose, all right. Death was calling me to another destiny. It was almost time for me to be death's emissary in modern cinema. Now, to understand the story of my Dracula, you have to understand the story of Hammer. Hammer was a film production company which by the mid-50s had been around some 2 decades. It had been established by the comedian William Hines in the early 30s and named for his stage persona, Will Hammer.
Post-war, Hammer Film Productions were devoted to second features, yes, what would previously have been called quota quickies. They began really with very forward thinking. They began by adapting already popular BBC radio subjects. But in among all that, they also got together with an American producer called Robert Lippert, and they started making second features that were aimed quite specifically at the American market.
Robert Lippert would send over fading American actors, and they would be leads in the pictures, which would allow a sale in America.
And, was not an excellent fencer.
But these were not roles that I could get my teeth into. It was a living, and it was work. The notion of film acting, especially in Britain at that time, as being in any way glamorous or indicative of a luxurious lifestyle, is entirely false.
Back then, maybe still today, I don't know, there's a slight whiff of disreputability, if that's a word, clung to the acting thing.
I think there was a bit of him saying, I suppose you think I'm not worthwhile because I'm just an actor. You know, which, of course, that's reversed much now, where, you know, you get a lot of people go, oh gosh, actors, they're really exciting people. But in my father's day, there was a bit of snootiness about actors.
Of course, he always told the story that when he went to his mother and announced his intention to become an actor, and she literally, in a very actressy way, she struck a melodramatic pose, and possibly, you know, the back of the hand to the forehead, and said, an actor, Christopher, just think of all the appalling people you'll meet.
It was work. It was work which I generally enjoyed, and work in which I became increasingly proficient. But it was 9 a.m. to 6:20 p.m. with a 15-minute